Zyra's world. On a distant planet named Veltara, the sky shimmered with shades of purple and green. Strange plants stretched toward the sun, and colorful creatures roamed the land. In this vibrant world lived Zyra, a young alien girl with bright blue skin and large, curious eyes. Zyra was strong and smart, but she had a heavy heart. She hated humans. Zyra grew up hearing stories about humans from her elders. They told tales of how humans were dangerous, greedy, and violent. Her people believed that humans only brought destruction. Zyra listened to these stories and felt a deep anger inside her. She could not understand why anyone would want to connect with such a terrible species. In Zyra's village, she often saw gatherings of her friends and family. They would talk about their dreams of finding a perfect mate when the mating season came. Mating season was a time of celebration. The air would fill with music and laughter, and everyone would decorate themselves with bright colors. But for Zyra, it was a reminder of the choices she faced. Her family expected her to find a strong alien partner, one who would protect her and give her a good life. However, she felt a strange emptiness in her heart. Zyra spent many hours wandering the lush forests of Veltara. She often climbed the tallest trees to get a better view of the land. From above, she could see the beauty of her planet, the sparkling rivers, and the hills that rolled like waves. But even in the beauty, she felt a shadow of loneliness. She knew that soon she would have to participate in the mating rituals, and she wasn't sure how she felt about it. One day, while exploring deeper into the forest, Zyra found a hidden glade filled with glowing flowers. She sat among them, thinking about her life and her feelings. What if humans are not as bad as they say? She whispered to herself, but she quickly shook her head, trying to push the thought away. She remembered the warnings from her elders. Stay away from humans. They will bring only trouble. Just then, Zyra heard a rustling sound. She turned around, her heart racing. A small animal jumped out from behind a bush. It was fluffy and cute, with big eyes. Zyra smiled, her fear fading. "You scared me," she laughed, reaching out to touch it. The animal nuzzled her hand, and for a moment, she forgot her worries. But as she played with the creature, a thought crossed her mind. What if there were humans out there, just like this little animal, innocent and curious? The idea made her uneasy. She quickly stood up, shaking off the strange feelings. No, she told herself, humans were not to be trusted. As Zyra made her way home, she felt the weight of her people's beliefs pressing down on her. She wanted to believe in something different, but the fear of the unknown held her back. When she arrived at her village, she saw her friends laughing and preparing for the mating season. They were excited, and she tried to join in their joy, but her heart felt heavy. Zyra looked up at the sky, watching the stars begin to twinkle. Deep inside, she wondered if she would ever find a true connection. She wanted to feel love and acceptance, but the hatred toward humans made that dream seem impossible. Little did she know, her world was about to change in ways she could never imagine. Mating season approaches. As the sun began to rise over Veltara, its warm light spread across the land, waking the colorful flowers and creatures that lived there. Zyra stood at her window, gazing at the beauty outside. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, and the soft sound of chirping birds made her heart flutter. But today was different. Today marked the start of the mating season, a time when excitement and anxiety filled the hearts of young aliens. Zyra's family had been preparing for this moment for weeks. Her mother had decorated their home with glowing vines and bright ribbons. The village buzzed with energy as everyone gathered to celebrate. Zyra could hear her friends laughing and playing outside, but she felt a heaviness in her chest. The thought of finding a mate made her nervous. In her culture, mating season was sacred. Young aliens would choose their partners for life, based on strength, beauty, and family connections. Zyra watched as her friends adorned themselves with colorful beads and painted their skin in beautiful patterns. They were filled with joy and hope, dreaming of their future mates. But Zyra couldn't share their excitement. She felt trapped between her duty to her family and her growing confusion about love. Later that day, Zyra's best friend, Lyra, came to visit. Lyra had bright green skin and a contagious smile. "Zyra, you have to get ready for the festival tonight. Everyone will be looking for their mates," Lyra exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. Zyra forced the smile, but couldn't shake the feeling of dread. "What if I don't find anyone?" she asked softly. Lyra shrugged, still cheerful. "You will. You're beautiful and strong. Just be yourself." As the day turned into night, the village transformed into a magical place. Colorful lights hung from every tree, and laughter echoed in the air. Zyra's heart raced as she saw couples dancing and sharing stories. She felt a mix of happiness for her friends and sadness for herself. At the festival, Zyra watched her peers pair off, some shyly and others boldly. She felt left out as she stood alone in the crowd. Her parents had high hopes for her, wanting her to choose a strong partner who would honor the family. But the thought of settling down with someone she didn't love filled her with fear. Suddenly, the village chief stepped onto a stage, raising his hands for silence. "Tonight, we celebrate love and unity. Remember, your mate is not just a partner. They are your family, your future." Zyra felt the weight of those words. What if she chose the wrong partner? What if she never felt the deep connection everyone talked about? As the music played, couples twirled and laughed, but Zyra felt isolated. She wondered if she would ever find someone who understood her, someone who saw beyond her blue skin and alien features. As the night went on, Zyra couldn't shake her worries. She stepped away from the festivities, seeking a quiet spot under a large tree. The stars above twinkled like tiny diamonds, and she wished for a moment of clarity. "Why do I feel this way?" she whispered to the night. Just then, she remembered Ethan, the human she had seen in the stories of her people. His face flashed in her mind, a reminder of her confusion. Could it be possible to find love outside her species? Zyra shook her head, trying to push the thought away. Humans were enemies, weren't they? But as she sat under the stars, the seeds of doubt began to grow. The night ended, but Zyra's struggle had just begun. Would she follow her heart, or would she let fear guide her? As she returned to the celebration, she knew the mating season would change everything. But how? Only time would tell. The crash. The day after the mating festival was bright and clear. Zyra woke up with a mix of hope and fear. The celebration had left her mind spinning with thoughts of love and connection. She decided to take a walk in the forest to clear her head. The vibrant colors of Velterra surrounded her, but today, even the beauty could not lift her spirits. She needed answers about her feelings. As Zyra walked deeper into the woods, she listened to the sounds of nature. Birds sang sweetly, and the wind whispered through the trees. But as she moved forward, she heard a strange noise, a loud booming sound that echoed in the sky. She stopped in her tracks, her heart racing. It sounded like something was falling. Suddenly, a bright flash of light caught her attention. Zyra looked up just in time to see a large object streaking through the sky. It was a ship, a human spaceship. Panic gripped her heart as she watched it tumble and spin. "What is happening?" she gasped. The spaceship crashed into a nearby clearing with a deafening roar. Trees shook and the ground trembled. Zyra stumbled back, her mind racing with fear and confusion. Humans, the very beings she had been taught to fear, were now crashing into her world. She stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. Curiosity quickly overcame her fear. Zyra knew she had to investigate. Taking a deep breath, she cautiously approached the crash site. Smoke rose into the sky, filling the air with a thick, acrid smell. Zyra could see the twisted metal of the ship lying on the ground, half buried in the earth. It looked damaged and broken, but she felt drawn to it. As she got closer, she heard a faint sound, someone calling for help. Zyra's heart raced. Could there be a human inside? The stories she had heard flooded back to her mind. Humans were dangerous, and they brought trouble. But this was different. This human was in pain. Zira gathered her courage and moved toward the ship. She peered through a cracked window and gasped. Inside, she saw a young man with short brown hair, struggling to free himself. His face was dirty and bruised, but his eyes shone with determination. "Help! Can anyone hear me?" he shouted, his voice filled with desperation. Zira hesitated. She knew she should turn away, but something inside her urged her to help. The human looked hurt and scared, just like she felt at the mating festival. What if he's not like the others? With that thought, she pushed her fear aside and decided to act. "Are you okay?" Zira called out, trying to sound brave. The human turned to her, surprise flashing across his face. "I'm stuck. Please, I need help," he replied, his voice more urgent now. Zira quickly assessed the situation. She spotted a fallen branch nearby and grabbed it. With all her strength, she pushed against the wreckage, trying to create enough space for the human to escape. "Come on, you can do it," she encouraged. With one final effort, the human wriggled free from the ship. He stumbled out, coughing and gasping for air. Zira stepped back, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment, they just stared at each other. He was so different from her, yet so similar. "I'm Ethan," the human said, wiping the dirt from his face. "Thank you for helping me." Zira felt a mix of emotions. Ethan. This was the moment that could change everything. She had always been taught to fear humans, yet here she was, helping one. As she looked into Ethan's eyes, she realized this was just the beginning of an unexpected journey. Forced allies. Zira stood in shock as she looked at Ethan, the human who had just escaped from the wrecked ship. Her heart raced with confusion and fear. "What do I do now?" she thought. She had always been taught to stay away from humans, yet here she was, face to face with one. Ethan took a deep breath and looked around the forest. "Where are we?" he asked, his voice shaky. "We are in Veltara," Zira replied cautiously. "This is my home." She could see the fear in his eyes, and it made her heart soften. Ethan nodded, still trying to catch his breath. "I crashed here. My ship had a malfunction," he explained, looking back at the ruined spaceship. "I didn't mean to land here." Zira felt a mix of emotions. She wanted to help him, but she also knew her people would never accept a human in their land. "You need to leave," she said firmly. "Humans are not welcome here." Ethan's expression turned serious. "I can't just leave. I have no ship and no way to get back home," he replied. "And I can't stay here alone. There are dangerous creatures in these woods." Zira hesitated. She remembered the stories about the fierce predators that roamed her planet. It was true. He would be in danger if he stayed alone. "What do you suggest we do?" she asked reluctantly. "I think we should work together," Ethan said. "If we team up, we can find a way to get you back home and keep you safe from those creatures." Zira frowned, unsure about the idea. Working with a human. It felt wrong. But she could not ignore the reality of the situation. "Fine," she finally agreed, "but we have to be careful. If my people find you, they won't hesitate to attack." Ethan nodded, relief washing over his face. "Thank you. I won't let you down." Together, they began to move deeper into the forest. Zira led the way, staying alert for any signs of danger. As they walked, Ethan asked her questions about Veltara. "What are those creatures like?" he inquired. "They are fast and strong. They hunt in packs," Zira warned. "We must keep quiet and stick to the shadows." Ethan nodded, listening carefully. They moved cautiously, with Zira always a few steps ahead. As they traveled, Zira noticed something surprising. Ethan was not as bad as she had imagined. He was brave, and he respected her knowledge of the forest. Suddenly, they heard a rustling sound nearby. Zira froze and put a finger to her lips, signaling Ethan to be quiet. They crouched behind a large tree, their hearts pounding. A group of fierce creatures emerged from the bushes. They had sharp teeth and glowing eyes, and they looked hungry. Zyra's instincts kicked in. "We have to go back," she whispered urgently. "They will smell us." Ethan nodded, his eyes wide with fear. They slowly began to back away, but one of the creatures spotted them and let out a loud growl. Panic surged through Zyra. "Run!" she shouted, taking off through the trees. Ethan followed close behind, his breath coming in quick gasps. They raced through the forest, dodging branches and leaping over fallen logs. Zyra felt the adrenaline rush through her veins. For the first time, she was not just an alien girl. She was a warrior, protecting her new ally. Finally, they reached a small cave hidden behind some bushes. "In here," Zyra urged, pulling Ethan inside just as the creature lunged after them. They pressed their backs against the cold stone wall, listening as the creature sniffed around outside. As they caught their breath in the dark cave, Zyra realized something important. They were now forced allies, thrown together by circumstances beyond their control. And in that moment, she felt a strange sense of connection with Ethan. They would have to rely on each other if they were to survive in this dangerous world. Conflicting feelings. Inside the dark cave, Zyra and Ethan sat close together, their hearts racing from their narrow escape. The growls of the creature faded into the distance, but the tension in the air remained thick. Zyra felt a swirl of emotions inside her: fear, confusion, and something else she couldn't quite name. Ethan took a deep breath, breaking the silence. "Thank you for saving me back there," he said, his voice low. "I didn't expect to meet someone like you on this planet." Zyra felt a blush creep onto her blue skin. She had never thought a human would admire her. I just did what anyone would do," she replied, avoiding his gaze. "Why am I feeling this way?" she wondered. It was wrong to feel any attraction toward Ethan, the very being she had been taught to fear. As they sat together in the cave, Zyra couldn't help but notice how brave Ethan was. He had a kind face, with warm brown eyes that seemed to sparkle even in the dim light. He was unlike the humans in the stories she had heard. Maybe humans weren't all bad, she thought, but a wave of guilt washed over her. "This is wrong. I shouldn't feel this way." Ethan broke her thoughts. "So, what are we going to do now?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "We can't stay here forever." Zyra sighed, her mind racing. "We need to find food and a safer place to hide. The mating season is coming, and if my people see you, they will attack." "Right," Ethan nodded, looking serious. "But how can we find food? I know nothing about this place." "I can help," Zyra said, her confidence returning. "I know the forest well. Follow my lead." As they prepared to leave the cave, Zyra felt a rush of excitement. They were becoming a team, but the thought also scared her. What if I start to like him? Her heart beat faster at the idea. They stepped out of the cave and into the sunlight. The bright colors of the forest filled her with energy. But she kept her focus. They moved quietly, staying alert for any signs of danger. Zyra led Ethan through familiar paths, pointing out edible plants and fruits along the way. "Can you eat this?" Ethan asked, holding up a strange-looking fruit. Zyra nodded. "Yes, it's sweet and full of energy." She picked a few and handed one to him. As he took a bite, his eyes lit up with surprise. "Wow, this is delicious," he exclaimed, and Zyra couldn't help but smile. His joy made her heart flutter. As they continued to gather food, they talked and laughed, slowly building a bond. With every shared moment, Zyra felt her feelings for Ethan deepen, but her mind kept reminding her of the risks. What will my people say? What will my family think? As they settled down to eat, Zyra watched Ethan. He was different, curious, and open. She admired how he respected her knowledge of the forest. But the more time they spent together, the more she felt pulled in two directions. "Zyra," Ethan said suddenly, interrupting her thoughts. "I know this must be hard for you. You're helping me, but it goes against everything you've been taught." Zyra looked down, shame washing over her. I feel confused, she admitted. I was raised to hate humans. But you are not what I expected. Ethan's gaze softened. I feel the same way. I never thought I would meet someone like you. You're brave and smart. Zara's heart raced at his words, but the weight of her culture pressed heavily on her shoulders. She wanted to embrace these feelings, but she feared the consequences. Would her people accept her if they found out? In that moment, Zara realized that her feelings for Ethan were becoming stronger than her fears. But could she really allow herself to love someone from the very species she had been taught to hate? The sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the forest. As they shared their meal, Zara felt both hope and fear. She knew that the path ahead would be difficult, but she was ready to face it. If only she could figure out what her heart truly wanted. Growing connection. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the forest, Zara and Ethan sat side by side, finishing their meal. The sweet fruit had given them both energy, but more than that, it had deepened the bond between them. They exchanged stories, sharing their cultures and dreams, and the air filled with laughter. Zara talked about her life in Veltara, the festivals, the beauty of the forest, and her family's traditions. Ethan listened intently, his brown eyes sparkling with interest. "Your planet sounds amazing," he said. "I wish I could see it all." "And I want to hear more about Earth," Zara replied, feeling a warmth in her chest. "What is it like there?" Ethan smiled, his expression brightening. "It's different from here. There are vast cities, tall buildings, and many different cultures. But sometimes it can feel lonely. I often wished for a real connection with someone." Zara felt a pang of understanding. "I know what you mean. I've always felt lonely too, even among my own people. I've never really fit in." Ethan turned to her, curiosity in his eyes. "You don't fit in, but you are so strong and brave. You saved me." Zara looked down, fidgeting with a piece of fruit. "I am strong, but there is pressure to conform. My family wants me to find a mate and settle down. They expect me to follow tradition. But I want something more." Ethan nodded, understanding the struggle. "I get it. Back on Earth, people expect you to follow certain paths too. But sometimes you have to follow your heart instead." Zara felt a warmth spread through her. She had never spoken so openly to anyone, especially not to a human. "You make me feel understood," she admitted, her voice soft. Ethan smiled back, a spark of connection forming between them. "I feel the same way, Zara. Being here with you feels different, like we're meant to be allies, even if the world says we shouldn't be." As they sat together, the distance between them seemed to fade. Zara felt her heart race whenever Ethan glanced her way, and she couldn't help but notice the kindness in his smile. She had been taught to hate humans, but Ethan was not just a human. He was Ethan, a person who listened, cared, and shared her dreams. Suddenly, a rustling noise broke their moment. Zara jumped to her feet, her instincts kicking in. "We need to be quiet," she whispered urgently. Ethan quickly followed her lead, and they crouched low behind a bush. Zara's heart raced as she peered through the leaves. A group of creatures was wandering nearby, large and fierce, with sharp teeth and glowing eyes. She could feel Ethan's tension beside her. "Do you think they can smell us?" he whispered. "I hope not," Zara replied, holding her breath. They watched as the creatures sniffed the ground, searching for food. "This is too close," she thought, feeling fear creep back into her heart. After what felt like hours, the creatures moved away, disappearing into the trees. Zara let out a sigh of relief and turned to Ethan. "That was close. We have to be careful." Ethan nodded, his face serious. "I trust you to keep us safe. You know this place better than I do." Zara felt a rush of pride at his words. "Thank you. We can work together to stay hidden." As they prepared to move again, a sense of teamwork blossomed between them. They were no longer just a girl and a human. They were partners facing the dangers of the forest together. Zara realized that her feelings for Ethan were growing stronger, and the fear of her people's reaction began to fade. Maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to bridge the gap between their worlds. And in doing so, she could discover the true meaning of connection. Hard choices. As the moon rose high in the sky, casting a silver light over the forest, Zara and Ethan found a small clearing where they could rest. The air was cool, and the sounds of the night surrounded them. But even in this peaceful moment, Zara felt a heaviness in her heart. The choices ahead of her weighed heavily on her mind. "Where do we go from here?" Ethan asked, breaking the silence. He was tired but still alert, watching Zara with keen interest. Zara looked up at the stars twinkling above them. "We need to find a safe place where you can hide until we can figure out how to repair your ship," she replied. "But I also need to think about my people." Ethan furrowed his brow. "Your people? What do you mean?" Zara took a deep breath. "If they find out I helped you, they will not accept it. They see humans as enemies. My family has expectations of me, and I'm afraid of what will happen if I go against them." Ethan nodded slowly, understanding the conflict she felt. "I get it, but you have to choose what's best for you. You can't let their fears control your life." Zara looked at him, her heart racing. "But I don't want to lose my family or my home. I've always wanted to belong. What if they reject me for helping you?" Ethan reached out and took her hand gently. "Zara, you are strong. You saved my life. Your heart is what matters. If you feel that helping me is right, then you should follow that path." His words gave her strength, but doubt still lingered. "It's not that easy. My people are protective, and they will see you as a threat." As they sat together, the reality of their situation settled in. They were on a journey filled with danger and uncertainty, but there was also the possibility of something beautiful, a world where humans and her people could understand each other. "I need to think," Zara said, pulling her hand away. "I can't just follow my feelings. I have to think about the bigger picture." Ethan looked disappointed, but nodded. "I understand. We can take our time. But please remember, not everyone is like the stories you've heard. I'm just a person, trying to find my way home." Zara felt a pang of guilt. She had spent so long hating humans without really knowing them. She didn't want to be like that anymore. "I'm sorry for how I felt before. You've shown me that there's more to you than I thought." Ethan smiled softly. "Thank you for saying that. I'm glad we can be honest with each other." As they talked, Zara's heart began to open to the possibilities. What if she could change things? What if she could help Ethan and still find a way to stay connected to her family? The thought sparked a flicker of hope within her. But then, the harsh reality crashed back in. She remembered her mother's face, filled with worry, her father's stern voice warning her about the dangers of humans. Zara felt torn between her growing feelings for Ethan and her loyalty to her family. Suddenly, a loud rustling noise broke through the quiet of the night. Both Zara and Ethan jumped to their feet, their senses heightened. "What was that?" Ethan whispered, his eyes wide with alarm. "Stay close," Zara instructed, her heart racing once more. They moved toward the sound cautiously, knowing that danger could be lurking just beyond the trees. As they stepped into the shadows, Zara felt a surge of determination. She realized that whatever choice she made, she would face it with courage. The connection she had with Ethan was too strong to ignore, and for the first time, she began to see a way forward, a path that might lead to a new understanding between their worlds. The final battle. The night air was thick with tension as Zara and Ethan crouched behind a large rock, watching the shadows dance around them. They had spent the last few days hiding and gathering supplies, preparing for the inevitable confrontation with Zara's people. Now they were just outside her village, and the sounds of celebration filled the air. The mating season festival was underway, but all Zara could feel was dread. "Are you sure about this?" Ethan asked, his voice low and filled with concern. "We can still turn back." Zara shook her head, her blue skin shimmering in the moonlight. No, we can't turn back. If we don't confront them, they will think I betrayed them. I have to show them you're not a threat." Ethan took a deep breath, knowing that Zira was right, but he couldn't shake the fear growing inside him. He had seen the fierce protectiveness of her people, and he was sure they would see him as an enemy. "Just remember, I'm right beside you. We face this together," he said, squeezing her hand for reassurance. With a determined nod, Zira stood up and stepped out from behind the rock. They moved toward the village, the sounds of laughter and music growing louder. The lights of the festival flickered like stars against the dark sky, creating a beautiful but deceptive scene. As they approached, Zira spotted familiar faces. Her friends danced around the fire, their joyful expressions a stark contrast to the worry she felt. She knew she had to speak to her people, but fear gripped her heart. "Zira," a voice called out, and she turned to see her childhood friend, Kira, running toward her. The joy in Kira's eyes faded as she saw Ethan. "What is he doing here?" Zira stepped forward, holding up her hands. "Wait, he is not a threat. He is my ally." The crowd around the fire grew silent, and eyes turned to Ethan, who stood beside Zira, trying to appear calm despite the tension in the air. "He's a human," someone shouted from the crowd. "Why are you with him?" "Because he saved my life," Zira replied, her voice rising above the murmurs. "I have seen the good in him. We need to stop seeing humans as enemies. They are not all bad." Kira looked between Zira and Ethan, confusion and anger flashing across her face. "You are betraying our people, Zira. This is dangerous." Before Zira could respond, a loud roar echoed from the forest, sending shivers down everyone's spines. The creatures that had chased them before were now advancing toward the village, hungry and fierce. Panic spread through the crowd as they realized the danger that had come. "Everyone, inside," someone shouted, but it was too late. The creatures surged into the festival, their eyes glowing with hunger. "Zira, we have to help them," Ethan shouted, his heart racing. Zira looked at him, and without a word, they sprang into action. They worked together, moving quickly to gather weapons from the village. Zira picked up a spear, her hand steady. "I will not let them take my home," she declared. Ethan grabbed a wooden staff, feeling a rush of adrenaline. "Let's do this." As the creatures entered the village, chaos erupted. Zira and Ethan fought side by side, using their skills to push back the attackers. Zira's agility and knowledge of the terrain combined with Ethan's strength and quick thinking made them a powerful team. "Over there," Zira yelled, pointing to a group of creatures trying to break into a nearby hut. Together, they charged forward, fighting with everything they had. The villagers, inspired by Zira's bravery, began to join the fight. They quickly realized that Ethan was not their enemy, but an ally. With each creature they defeated, the tension between humans and Zira's people began to fade. As the battle raged on, Zira's heart swelled with hope. They could overcome this together. She glanced at Ethan, who smiled back at her, and in that moment, she knew they would win. With their combined strength, they pushed back the last of the creatures, sending them fleeing into the night. Breathing heavily, Zira looked around at her people, who now stared at Ethan with respect instead of fear. "We did it," she shouted, feeling a surge of victory. And as she stood there, surrounded by her friends and allies, she realized that this was the beginning of a new path, a future where humans and her people could stand together. New beginnings. As the first light of dawn broke over the village, Zira stood outside, watching the sunrise. The sky was painted with beautiful shades of orange and pink, a sign of hope after a long and challenging night. The battle was over, and the creatures had fled. The village was safe once again, but the true victory lay in what had changed between the humans and her people. Zira took a deep breath, feeling the fresh morning air fill her lungs. Behind her, the village was buzzing with activity. Her friends were rebuilding, checking on each other, and sharing stories of bravery. It felt good to see everyone coming together. Zira. Kira's voice called out, pulling her from her thoughts. She turned to see her friend running toward her, a look of relief on her face. We did it. I can't believe we fought them off together. Zira smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Yes, we did. And we couldn't have done it without everyone's help, including Ethan's. She glanced at Ethan, who was speaking with some of the villagers. They were listening intently, and she could see that they were finally beginning to understand him. Kira looked surprised. You really think we can trust him? Yes, Zira replied firmly. He showed us that humans can be allies. We have to move forward together, not apart. Kira considered this for a moment. I suppose you're right. He fought bravely last night. Maybe we can learn from each other. Just then, Ethan turned and walked over, his face bright with excitement. Hey, everyone. I just spoke to your elders. They want to meet and discuss how we can work together. Zira felt a rush of happiness. That's wonderful. We can build a bridge between our worlds. As they gathered with the village leaders, the air was filled with nervous energy. Zira stood beside Ethan, ready to support him. The elders had been hesitant to accept him, but after the battle, their minds were beginning to open. Today, we stand together, the eldest leader began, her voice strong. Zira has shown us that not all humans are enemies. Ethan fought beside us, and we owe him our gratitude. Ethan nodded, a look of determination on his face. I want to learn about your culture and share mine. Together, we can create a safer world for both our peoples. Zira felt a surge of hope as the villagers listened closely. They exchanged ideas about cooperation, trading knowledge, and even sharing food. The walls that once divided them were slowly crumbling, replaced by a bridge of understanding and respect. After the meeting, Zira and Ethan walked away from the crowd, their hearts lighter. I can't believe how far we've come, Ethan said, smiling at her. I never thought I would be welcomed like this. Zira beamed back at him. You deserve it. You showed my people that you are not just a human. You are our friend. As they walked through the village, Zira felt a new sense of belonging. She had faced her fears and chosen to follow her heart, and now it felt right. She could help her people and build a future where both species could thrive together. That evening, as the village lit lanterns for the first festival of unity, Zira stood beside Ethan, feeling more connected than ever. The celebration was joyful, with music, dancing, and laughter filling the air. Zira could see hope shining in everyone's eyes. As they joined in the festivities, Zira took Ethan's hand, feeling a warmth spread through her. This is just the beginning, she said softly. We will work together to make sure our worlds understand each other. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. And I will always be by your side, no matter what. As they danced together under the stars, Zira knew that new beginnings were here. They had fought for change, and now they could build a future filled with promise and friendship. With courage and love, they would create a world where both humans and her people could thrive together, side by side.